Welcome to D&December. It's Christmas Day, and as you can see, I've got Lars with me. We've also got someone else joining us today, active duty military, game creator, and his dad made this game back in the 70s something. Well, it's Luke Gygax.
Hey, pleasure to be here.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas to you all.
And again, thank you very much, Luke, for joining us. Those who are in the know that Luke, of course, is one of, as we refer to, the crown princes of gaming and, of course, role-playing games.
Did you just call him a crown princess?
One of the crown princes. Thank you.
Okay, I was just checking.
But, since his brother Ernie isn't here with us, we have to at least, show reverence. So
thank you. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that sentiment, and I feel very blessed to have the background, the legacy that I do with my father creating Dungeons and Dragons in 1973 really, and publishing it in 74. And it's just been a really wonderful and unique life for me and the rest of my family to be involved with the gaming hobby and all of our lives. My earliest memories are literally around the gaming table, whether it was role-playing games or playing board games from Dungeon or chess or checkers or pit or cards. Gaming, railroad games, they were very important to my childhood. My father loved all sorts of games.
I recently completed the Empire of Imagination, and to be fair, it did shed some light on a person who I was only familiar with, of course, through work in role-playing games, but it actually made him a lot more human to me. And also, again, being able to see a little bit of a glimpse into the lives of his family, include yourself, your brothers and sisters, your mother, and how you guys took something that was, would have just been a hobby for some people and turned it into a pop culture icon. Yourself being part of the development, not just as playing the game, but you also worked in publishing things like the module, The Lost City of Gaxmore. But of course, anybody who has played Dungeons and Dragons or played, like again, we're going through DDO. I think we're just wrapping up with our new characters, the Keep on the
Borderlands. We just finished that area, and now we're. I think we've done a couple little things inside.
we've all been hit.
I can't remember.
Arrow.
My brain completely blank because I haven't looked at the game in a couple days.
Of course,
it happens to the best of us.
Eberron.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember. Stormreach. That's what I was trying to remember. Don't worry, I blank out all the time on videos. So first big question I was just wondering. Something that just came to my mind is Melf, the character, one of your first characters in Dungeons and Dragons. Do you have any really cool stories that you haven't really shared too much of? Something just, or you haven't shared in a while, or something that a lot of people haven't heard.
Oh man, I don't know. There's you gotta remember I played Melf. I played Otis from the age of like 4 years old to about 9 probably, and he was my first character. He was went through the D and the G and the D series, and then he met a very ignoble end. Perhaps my father was in a bad mood, but I was bugging him to play D&D, and so my sister Heidi, who's 2 years older than me, and I sat down to play. Yeah, I was 9 or 10 maybe, it probably somewhere in that range, and we ended up going into a strange, finding a plateau. And we were told there was a crypt in there, a resting place with great treasures that were in there. So my sister playing Murphles and me playing Otis went in there, and of course it was the Tomb of Horrors. So it was, it was Tomb of Horrors, and I was like 10, and so I went in there, and needless to say, it didn't go well.
Died.
I ended up having all my stuff teleported to the back, right? It's spoiler alert if no one's familiar with that. And then, it takes you back to the beginning. So I was trying to go through and find my stuff. I ended up in the 10 by 10 room with the 3 levers. And I believe I think I put them all up, and I think that drops the floor out from underneath you, if I remember right. And so I fell down a 100-foot pit, but seeing as he was a 10th level ranger with a great constitution, I had 114 hit points or something like that. So I survived the fall, but then I was stuck down there forever, and I never played him again. So he probably died in that pit. That was a very emotional moment for me as the first character died. So that was a bummer. And I rolled up Melf after that as to play, and I started adventuring down in Castle Greyhawk with Melf. And let's see. Well, here's a fun story about Melf. He was a good guy, and I called him Mel for he got his moniker, which I called him Mel for the Green Arrow, because in Hamlet, I think you guys were mentioning Keep on the Borderlands, but another iconic beginning area was T1, the village of Hamlet, right?
Yep.
So I went and I fought Lareth at the Moat House and defeated him, and I got a staff. I think he had a staff of striking. I got that off of him, and then a random magic item was I rolled up some magical arrows, and I got a +4 arrow, and so I painted it green and made that put it on my shield, and that was my thing. I always had this arrow that I carried around with me, and so I went through all these all these modules just like everybody else, and kind of have like that same lingua franca that we have. But in the dungeons beneath Castle Greyhawk, the old school style of gaming was very important to map properly, because that was an aspect of the game which we don't, which is really, I think, gone away. Most people don't care about the mapping as much. But it was important because it was one of the puzzles that was in front of you. You had to figure out where you were, how to get to, how to get out again, how to get to other areas of the dungeon to find treasure, but also to find the secrets in that labyrinth. Because many times you'd map it all around, you'd notice there might be a spot where a room could be, right? Something that would make sense, and that's how you would know to look for a secret door potentially, and things of that nature. So, mapping was very important, and I mapped around in the dungeon. I came. So it's hard to explain, but I went down basically from north to south, down a long passageway, and then turned to the east and went about 30 feet, and there was a door to the north. So I basically did an L shape, and then there's a room up above. So I opened that up, and of course back then you had to roll to open dungeon doors. That was another part of, people remember this. So you open it up. Well, it was filled with a room full of whites. Don't remember. In first edition Dungeons and Dragons, if a white touched you, you lost a level, and that was particularly devastating because I was a fighter magic user, elven fighter magic user, so I would have lost a level in each. So I had to divide my experience in half, right? Divide it into both of those groups, so I'd have lost a level in each one. So that would have been a pretty big bummer. So I shut the door and I ran out of there. Hired some men-at-arms, came down with my plan, and I had buckets of oil and torches, and I was going to have these men-at-arms. Basically, I was going to boot open the door. We're going to fill the room with oil, burn out these whites, and then I would get some treasure. Now, of course, that's a risk because a lot of my treasure would have probably been burnt up and that sort of stuff. So, but this is like the second or third level of the dungeon, and I was fourth level, maybe fifth level. I don't think I had fireball yet. And so, plan goes just as I had hoped it would. Open the door, oil, torches, and I shut the door. Well, what I didn't know is there was a secret door. As I said, this had gone down in an L shape. Well, there was a secret door that the whites knew about that came out, and of course, they now had us trapped in a dead-end passage, right? So I had managed to burn up two of them. I think the other two might have been wounded. So I managed to defeat them, but one of the guys died. One of the men-at-arms died. So I carried his body out, and I was a good guy. And I said, okay, well, I found some treasure. I found a +2 longsword, which I carried with me for many, many years. That was a big treasure. I saw lots of ashes and stuff that was probably, scrolls or broken bottles that may have held potions and things of that nature. Of course, my dad was stingy, so I would never get any of that. If you took an easy way, like burning it or throwing spells in there, you had to make all the saves. and then I think I got 75% of the value of the gold because it was melted or something. So just little stuff, fun stuff like that.
All these naggy little things just to make it tougher.
Always. It was definitely a challenge, and I think that's a bit of a difference in play style. Is the dungeon master is really pitting yourself against the dungeon master. Now, dungeon master obviously could just say, fire range,
you're
die,
dead.
you die, or you're dead, right? But what they want to do is challenge you, and there's consequences for not catching on or for maybe making decisions that are unwise. Whereas I think the style now is we tend to roll with what the players are doing and make the storyline more exciting for them, even if they don't make the wisest choices. I think a lot of times we lack some of the consequences that would have come with that, or maybe retreating in certain instances. So it's just a stylistic difference. There's no you could certainly bring that to 5th edition if you want to, or any role-playing game style, really, any role-playing game that style. But this guy died, so I brought him out and I took all my money because I was a young player. I was 10, 11 maybe, so I felt bad for him. My dad had his wife crying, and because I was just going to pay a weir guilt, and say, here you go, here's 2 or 3 times his payment. But what are we going to do? So I took him to the church, Church of St. Cuthbert, I think it was, and I paid 10,000 gold pieces to have a resurrection spell thrown for him. That was a lot of money. That basically cleaned me out. So I spent the money, and guess what? What do you have to do when you resurrect? Anyone remember? System shock. Remember that chart in the
System shock.
Yeah, it's like on page 7 or something, like under Constitution.
Let me guess.
Yeah, Ebola.
Let me guess. He failed.
He failed his system shock. So here I was, the wife is distraught. He's got a kid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do here? So it was high drama for me. So I was like, all right, well, I'm going to go on a quest. I said, I swore I would bring him back to you. So I'm going to make this right. So I went and I found a sage, and they said, well, you could go see a druid, and they could reincarnate him. So I went out, found a druid, did a deed for him, conquered, killed some monster, brought something back for him. I don't remember the exact details there. And he cast reincarnate. So my dad diced it, and he came back as a halfling. So I rolled pretty good. Came back as a halfling. And then he used, if you remember, the DMG had these wonderful charts in the back where you could roll up the personality of an NPC, right?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Yeah, he rolled him. He was fanatically loyal to me for doing that. We diced the loyalty and all that stuff. We diced up all his stats, and turned out to be a fighter thief who was fanatically loyal to me, but he was pessimistic and morose. Those were his. So he was kind of like he was my Eeyore. He's like, it's never going to work, boss. I don't know. But he followed me around all the time. His wife was like, no, I don't really want a halfling as a husband, but thank you so much. So I just, he sent her money all the time and from the adventuring, but he was my sidekick, Biff.
If it was sci-fi, I could imagine him being your version of Marvin the android.
Yeah, yes, pretty much. And so he was always kind of like, I don't think it's going to work, boss, but okay if you say so. And so I went on all my adventures with Biff. A lot of times I did solo adventuring because I was the youngest of the children. I have a younger brother now, my half brother Alex, who's about 16 years younger than me. But up until that point, it was mostly me in the house, and I just bugged my dad, and so we'd play Melf and Biff. I went through the Lost Caverns of Sajkanth. I think I went through every single room, every encounter, because he was playtesting it, right? So he really wanted me to go through that. I think I spent about a year or a year and a half of game time going through it.
Wow.
Because I had no cleric and no healing spells. So
of course,
I'd go down the dungeon, I'd just come out and spend a month healing.
And then go back.
With the differences, you talked about how it is a special kind of relationship between player and dungeon master, where the dungeon master isn't, like the cliche is the dungeon master is basically looking for a TPK at any chance he or she gets. But that's not true. I mean, an accomplished dungeon master is a skillful storyteller who provides challenges to entertain the players and to provide an immersive experience. But you mentioned
only kill you if you're really stupid.
If you deserve it. If you repeatedly do dumb stuff and you don't take the hint, then there's got to be some consequence, right? Otherwise, what are you doing?
Exactly. And one thing we were talking about modern gaming, because I've played D&D since I was about 14 years old. I'm in my mid 40s. You know, and I've seen the different iterations. Kind of skipped over AD&D a little bit because it was kind of that period where I was a rebellious teenager and was off seeing the world as much as I could. But then I came back and picked up with the third edition and then 3.5. And of course, 5 is by far my favorite version of the game, because I guess maybe the way I play, it was easier to pick up the rules and stay with them. Not to say that each edition didn't have its own values and bonuses, but definitely 5th edition is my favorite version of the rules. Do you actually have a favorite version?
I first edition is just what I know so well. I'm very comfortable with it. So all of its wonkiness doesn't seem wonky to me. That's how the game is played, right? So I totally get it. However, I can acknowledge that the 5th edition is a great game system. And from talking to Mike Merles about it, his home game was 1st edition. Up until they created 5th edition. So they really looked and thought, okay, what is it that made this edition of Dungeons and Dragons, feel good to us? And I think it was some of its simplicity, right? If we think about 3rd edition and Pathfinder, nowadays, people call it, Mathfinder and that sort of stuff, right? It's a little bit more, there's a little bit more calculations, right? A little bit more math.
Rules on rules on rules on rules.
There's a lot of it. And even when I ran it, the combats would take quite a while, because I wrote Gygax more basically with my brother Ernie for the hobby shop. He ran the dungeon hobby shop for Margaret Weiss back then in Lake Geneva. And I was just out of college or something. Yeah, I think I'd just been out of college a couple of years. And sweet game. And Ernie didn't want to learn the new system, the new rule system. And he's like, well, if we're doing this, we may as well, write it up and you figure out 3rd edition. So I tried. I got the rules well enough. But I would run for up to 24 people one time, 26. Wow. It was a lot. It was a lot. There was a lot of young kids. You can imagine how hellacious that is, trying to run that many people through combats. So
yeah, that's
a few hours around.
Yeah. So that, yeah, right. Exactly. It really was. You'd have a combat and boom, that was the adventures, and you really had to pace it. Like, what are you doing? 1001, 1002, 1003. All right, next guy. You'd have to be pretty draconian in that sense. So I don't like getting tied down by the rules too much. So 1st edition didn't have a lot of rules for things, right? So 5th edition kind of has this, challenge rating, difficulty rating, whatever. I think challenge rating, right? So you know what the challenge rating is. You just roll on the D20, keeping it pretty simple so you can kind of handle non-combat stuff. You handle combat stuff. Instead of THAC0, you've got, the ascending scale. So they kind of, smooth that out. They got rid of the wonkiness with the power bands, where, a magic user at 1st level, AC, what's your best AC? AC 6 if you have an 18 dex. That's, it's not too many people have an 18 in dex. So you're very, you're easy to hit. You have a D4 hit points and you got 1 spell, right? Once that spell's gone, you're just kind of hanging out in the back hoping you don't get killed. Maybe throwing some darts if you're lucky and you took darts, right? So now everybody has a longsword, whether you're a wizard or, warlock or whatever it is. You got, firebolt or whatever the cantrip is. You get to roll, and everybody has their longsword, right? So they kind of smoothed that power balance, the power bands, and made it less wonky. And it rolls pretty smoothly. You can do almost anything, right? It can be based on a skill or a stat, and they give you some pretty easy guidance on this is so difficult, whatever. So I think it's just fun to play, right? And then they've increased, just like movies are paced differently nowadays, TV shows. If you look back at the 70s and my films that might have been on then, certainly there wasn't a lot of fantasy films anyway, but even look at detective films, dramas, whatever was on there, much more slower paced, much more development, right? Whereas currently, things tend to develop more quickly. There's a lot more action, that sort of stuff. So I think we see the pacing of your D&D game to fit more of what we're used to consuming our entertainment and other
It's more of a slow burn. Now it's people with the generation now. It tends to be more instant gratification. So you want to fight them. You want to defeat the dungeon. You want to find the treasure. You want it. You want it. You want it. You want it. And if it fits your style of playing, okay, more power to you.
There's no wrong way to play D&D, guys. If you like 4th edition, which was pretty widely,
okay, we got to end this call now. Click. No.
Yeah, yeah. Even if you play 4th edition, I played it once. I thought it was okay. It just wasn't D&D to me. It was a good game. It just wasn't Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I felt it was.
Same here.
I played it once. I felt that a lot of the control of the characters was taken away from the players, and like I know that when your dad ran, when he created when these guys were putting this game together and coalescing their ideas and play testing, a lot of it was down to the DM did have a lot more control than they do now, but at the same time. I just felt like you couldn't be your character. That's part of what role playing is about, is taking who you are as a person and transferring the essence of what you like and what you want into an imaginary character. Patrick has been our DM for a long time, and he gives us an incredible amount of freedom to come up with characters and be flexible, which is how my character Hetfield von Ulrich
Yes.
he's a bard, and it's not just like this stiff cardboard cutout character that I have to play. These sessions become almost therapeutic because they're so entertaining. You're playing a character of immense imagination, and part of your a part of your personality comes out that most people don't see. I love telling this little story. He was running us through his world of Adrian, where were we in the Sunless Citadel?
I think it's last whole bunch of sessions was Sunless Citadel.
Right. So there was a pit trap, and nobody in our group had the ability to disarm the trap. So I had to chance it, and I rolled a nat 20. And he says, "Okay, how do describe how he disables the trap?" So I started playing Billie Jean by Michael Jackson. Like this bar starts moonwalking across the trap and disables it.
It was glorious.
Yeah, and of course the other characters are like, "What? What did he just do? How did that just happen?" And even if it doesn't really fit the rules, it was entertaining. So
yeah.
There's no wrong way to play this game.
There isn't, and the entertainment value of it is more prevalent. I think people are, it's just how you want to consume your entertainment. So, my dad and other folks, they were making it up as they went along, right? And what makes a role-playing game different is the fact that it's, think about it. Previous to a role-playing game, previous to Dungeons and Dragons, was the first one, if we were playing a game, there'd be a winner and loser, right? The game had a start and an end, right? That was pretty well defined. Typically, it was played on a board or a map, and there wasn't, that was, your boundaries were pretty specific, and there was no development. If we played the game today, and Lars won, and then we got it out again tomorrow, Lars had no advantage in playing the game again. There was no development. We would essentially start at the same point we started the last time and go through, and there'd be differences due to whatever play in dice roll. But now in role playing, it's cooperative. There's no end point, right? You are limited by your imagination. You can go wherever you want to go, and of course, the idea of leveling up and improving over time and developing character, is all was revolutionary, right? That's now we all was like, well, of course, no kidding, but that wasn't the way it was. That didn't exist. That game wasn't there, so that was all new, and that's that's the truly amazing part about role playing games in D&D. And you alluded to the development and the cool stuff that you learn, and you get to bring out other facets of your personality. You get to test. And try out new things. Especially, it's why kind of I think it has a special appeal to young people. Although obviously I still play today, but when you are wondering who you are and how you fit in the world and this sort of stuff, you can test out various things. You can be, maybe if you're a really shy person, you could be that brash barbarian, right? And do these things. Or if you want respect, maybe you're the wise, wizard who knows a lot about arcana and, spit forth the various bits of information, or whatever the case may be, right? You get to test your personalities and things like that. So, but back in the day, these guys were all war gamers, right? So just think about it. So they were very used to the competitive style of play, right? And so that leaked over even into role playing a little bit, right? So, and they were readers of Conan and this sort of stuff. So it was about brash adventuring and this sort of stuff. So the times definitely affect how you're experiencing the game, I would say. And now it is developed a little bit differently. Some people still play in an older school style. Some are going all talk. Some still like to role play, with the roll the dice and crush stuff. When I played with my daughter when she was 8, she didn't really want any of the setup. She just was like, put down the terrain, put all the Reaper minis in there, and I get to kick in the door. All right, great, I get to start swinging my sword. And that's what she wanted to do. So
Munchkin style, basically.
Absolutely Munchkin.
Yeah, she just wanted to cut, and then she wanted to know what treasure it was.
Okay.
She wanted to beat up a lot of stuff, and then, but where was the treasure? Whereas my middle and younger daughter, they want to talk to stuff more.
Right.
They were sad. I had them coming in and they had to rescue somebody, like some goblins that attacked a little village or farmhouse. And I was like, oh yes, you're approaching and you notice something's wrong. There's a little bit of smoke and you see there's a dead sheep in the field. And they're like, oh my God, the sheep is dead. Let's go see if we can save the sheep. So I was like, okay, all right, when you get to the sheep, yeah, it's just wounded. It's still alive. And they're able, well, we'll heal the sheep. I was like, okay, so the sheep is alive. Good job. And then they went and fought the goblins. But there's times when they were like, they suggested like not fighting the monster or something. And it's like, all right.
Well, and it's
roll with it.
This whole thing of how we play is actually a really good talking point, because as of right now, we're on, we're all dealing with the complications of COVID-19 and how it changed. I remember I had joined when I moved up to Santa Clarita Valley. I had joined a local group, and immediately they're like, oh, look, hey, we're going to have to go online. We have to do the whole, let's do Roll20, let's do Discord and that sort of stuff. And that's how it's been. I mean, for the last year, there has been no in-person gaming for us, especially here in the state of California. I mean, people who are being cautious and taking precautions are, of course, having to do the best they can to get through. I actually just joined another group that's starting up with Strahd in a couple of weeks. So, everybody's having to adjust to doing things in a different way, of not being in the same room. For me, and that was one thing that held me up from going back into the gaming scene for a little while, especially during COVID, is that for me, it wasn't just the game. It wasn't just the fantasy. It was the camaraderie. It was the Mountain Dew and Doritos. It was the sitting in a dark room with a map and a character sheet, or surrounded by my friends. So we've had to adjust. And of course, things have been affected. One of the things that we had noted just before, while we were talking before the show, is how COVID affected GaryCon. Of course, along with a number of other conventions, including one of our favorites, Gen Con. And yeah, I mean, obviously you guys had to cancel 2020. You've now made the decision to cancel the in-person for 2021, unfortunately. But I think based on what the model you've gone through, at least you guys have been able to pull it back up and keep it on legs until we can get through this.
Yes, it's been a real challenge, and I have to say, GaryCon was just positioned at the wrong time in 2020.
Late March.
Yeah, right. So late March.
Yeah.
So I had about 14 days to react when the governor said, hey, you can't do any gatherings. So we had about 14 days to pivot from an in-person convention to all what we're calling ethereal now, or a virtual convention, right? So I was lucky. We had about 2,000 people who still, attended GaryCon in a virtual format. We had about 600 events. So that was, I think that was, that's something that showed other people we can do it, right? And it wasn't me. I'm not particularly bright when it comes to, running virtual games or any of that sort of stuff. Plus, my real job is, at that time, I was the operations officer for the 224th Sustainment Brigade in the California National Guard. It's my full-time job. And of course, with COVID kicking off, we had a lot of missions that popped up. Food banks were running. We had to stand up medical teams, and there was basically, I was working, 12-hour days and that sort of stuff. But there was a whole team of people. All the attendees didn't want to see this thing fail. A lot of vendors and just interested people, friends, my family, people I've met. GaryCon is something that's important to them. It's a family. People describe it as a family reunion for the family you choose, right? Your gaming family. So they wanted to see it happen, and so they banded together, and we shifted, to a virtual space. And I have to thank a guy named known as Casey Rift, Matt Everhart. He ran Kobold Con for a while. And then he was helping out running just, hey, let's do some virtual stuff at GaryCon. And I had said yes the previous year, and he was there that year. And fortunately, we had a very small infrastructure, and boom, we were able to swell it up. And this year, I'd really thought, okay, great. Looks like things are getting a little bit better in the summer months. Maybe we should have a vaccine. Gosh, things are going to be okay. Let's go ahead and do a plan on a physical convention. It wasn't going to happen. So sadly, month, 6 weeks ago, probably something like that, we just looked at the numbers. Maybe it's, a couple months ago now, guys. Sorry, December, right? It's almost Christmas time is flown by.
Yep.
So we made that decision. We said, hey, as much as it saddens us, let's go ahead and not hold a physical convention. Let's do all virtual, and we'll come back in 2022 and pick up where we left off in 2019 and having physical conventions. Is it the same? No, but I tell you what, we've made some advances, and I think I ran this convention, if you can see it, Autumn Revel, right? To help test how we could make things better. That was an all virtual convention we did in the summertime.
Right.
Correction, in the fall. And I think virtual gaming is great. So we can do Zoom meetings like this, and we're all talking and conversating. But the problem is, if you aren't in our game, if you aren't in this Zoom call, you don't get the experience of kind of walking past the gaming tables, being able to stop and listen, right? So I think in Discord over the past 4 months or so, they've improved upon where you can, you have your game rooms, right? Which is essentially a table, right? At a physical convention, you can have people come into your Discord and view. So if you had events that people wanted to stop in and watch, like maybe some, a guy like Mike Merles or something running a D&D game, you could have people view that. They wouldn't be streaming on a Twitch channel per se, or it could be, but you could be in there and chatting in a room, and you could do that. There's also some interactive, some larger scale games that you can play. I think like Go Go Goblin is one of them, where you can have like 100 players and maybe have some ways to interact there. So I'm looking at some of those, give you kind of that group feel, again, doing stuff together. And then maybe talk to another guy who's maybe had done some Discord programming, where you could kind of send, on the scroll, make little announcements like, oh, we just killed the dragon, or yeah, we did this. So if you were playing, everybody was playing a similar scenario or something, you could share some news, and just kind of, it'd be almost like hearing that table cheering next to you. So those are some of the things that I want to try to help promote, so that we get that feeling. So that's part of what makes GaryCon special. Obviously, for me, it's very special. It came out of, it's a memorial convention for my father. I get to see my family. I get to see a lot of old friends, and we get to, honor my father's memory. It's very important. But we also get to have a whole lot of fun doing what he loved most in life, playing games, right? And part of why my dad loved playing games so much, I think, is exactly what you said, the camaraderie around the table, the friendship, besides the actual game part, catching up with people, enjoying good food, good drink, good conversation, and that's very important. And so being able to help carry that into the virtual realm and give that to people, I think is important, because it gets pretty lonely. I've been sitting at home. I'm just getting over COVID-19, and I've been sitting at home a whole bunch, hence this beard, which I don't normally have. Yeah, but it gets, even though I'm here with my kids, my wife and kids, I can't really hug them. I can't. It gets pretty lonely. That's no fun. So and I understand many people may be live alone, or maybe they just have just a partner or something like that, and so it can get pretty lonely. So having that chance to interact and feel that sense of community can really bolster your spirits. So I want to do some gaming. The gaming community is good. I want to share that goodness and help raise people up.
No, it's yeah. I mean, we of course, like we're avid attendees of Gen Con as well. I as with any popular convention, they tend to bloat out, and it tends to get overly complicated. And I mean, the 4 days that we spend in Indianapolis ends up being almost a chore sometimes, except for those bright moments when you're actually sitting and gaming with people. But we're privileged to have been able to take part in these sessions with people who have carried on a legacy that your father and a bunch of other great people started, and of course yourself carries on as well. One of the things that I actually mentioned to Patrick before we started was that you, from what I see, I've been very privileged to be able to follow you on social media, and I see that you do post things where you play games with your children and your family, and that's exactly what this is all about. I mean, it was fantastic that they were able to, they were able to take a wonderful, fun thing to do and turn it into a business and provide a lifestyle for people and a living. A livelihood for people, especially very talented designers, artists, so on and so forth. But the greatest gift I feel is that you guys are carrying on a legacy. You're sharing that with your children. Patrick shares it with his children.
When they tolerate it.
Son is old.
And sometimes they're like, I don't want to play. What do you mean you don't want to play?
Exactly. Come on.
Days of the week, then and why now?
Right. So to wrap this up, again, thank you very much for sharing everything with us. In 2022, we're looking to hopefully be physical attendees of Gary Con, as well as hopefully Gen Con comes back.
Yeah, I think, did they talk about Gen Con happening in 2021? Did I dream that, or I thought I read something where I might have been a dream.
They may or may not. I don't know off the top of my head.
I'll have to call
just
Peter.
I'll have to ask Peter and see it, and if he could let me know the insight on that one.
Yeah. Gary Con, you've got that 25th through 28th this year, virtually, obviously.
Yep.
So
badges are available now. You can go to garycon.com and click the link. It'll take you to the tabletop.event site, or you can just go to tabletop.events and search GaryCon 13.
There you go.
Use Roman numerals XIII, and you'll get there. So please join us. We have lots of amazing guests who will be joining us as usual, anywhere from your Tim Casks and Errol Otis's and all those guys, as well as Jolly and Joe Goodman, and heck, just pretty much everybody who comes there physically is going to be there virtually with us, playing games, celebrating a life well played, and carrying on this celebrating this great legacy of gaming that we have.
Absolutely. So I think on that note, we'll go ahead and say goodbye and Merry Christmas to everybody, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, this has been D&December. We're the Red Shirt Geeks, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, Luke.
My pleasure. Take care, guys.